Welcome, everybody, to the Lone Wolf Show. And I'm the Lone Wolf. And we have a special presenters series for WitchCon. And we had just lost the first guest for some tech issues, but he will be right back, I'm sure, and we'll get him right back on. And I'm not going to tell you who it is yet, but when he pops back on the screen, we can introduce him. And for now, we'll be right back. And we hope that you keep it right here on Witchcraft TV, www.witchcrafttv.online. Couple quick commercials as we try to get our guests back. And here is our guest back. So we'll hold off on those commercials. And here he is, Bryan Peters, everyone. Bryan, how you doing?
Good. How are you? I was trying to share it out to my followers, but I ended up getting taken by tech on this, so we'll figure it out as we go. It's good to be here, guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So when did you first start getting involved into, we'll go jump right into it, WitchCon?
So WitchCon, I've been doing WitchCon. This is my second year as a promoter, doing what I do. Here in Akron, Ohio, I've actually been doing teaching and been doing quite a few classes here for quite a few years here in my area. So here in Akron, we do classes, we do special events. We sit for seance, we sit for traditional Victorian seances, as well as for table tipping. So as far as doing the work, as I always talk about, we've been doing the work now here at the Healing Brew for 7 years. Really looking at trying to grow the community, and more importantly, kind of give a voice to the witches of sorts, because I think a lot of people have a misconception when it comes to what witchcraft is, what spiritualism is, what seances are, and what they're all about.
What kind of misconceptions do you think are prominent within, the Cowan and Muggle community?
It's interesting that you use the term muggle, and I actually myself just got back from Harry Potter World, so for me that's even takes this one step further. But I think what a lot of people we like that word or that term witch, and that word witch I think is where the problem comes into play. And I think it's more to do with the outcasts. It tends to do with those outliers, and I think it has very little to do with magic, because one of those conversations I always like to talk about is I'm a recovering Catholic, as I call it. And if you start looking at Catholicism and you look at what happens at Mass on Sunday morning, is that magic? Is that witchcraft just deemed appropriate because it's being done via Catholicism? Transforming wine into blood, is that magic? And I get a lot of heat for saying it that way, but at the end of the day, really truly, it's what it's all about. It's all about that connection to the divine and using yourself as that tool to be able to create more.
Mhm. So I see a Ouija board in the background.
You
Is a
do.
Ouija board, is that like your go-to for divination? Is that where
It
you're
is
proficient?
not. It's actually our shop Ouija board. We actually use it as part of our demystifying series. We actually run a demystifying series here at the shop. We actually talk about Ouija boards. We talk about funeral rites. We talk about witchcraft. And what we found out is that by education and by pushing that information out in the community, it seems like more people are more aware of it, and more people are more accepting of it. That little bad boy up there, believe it or not, was not considered bad until they actually came out with the Exorcist movies back there in the 60s and 70s. And after the Exorcist movies aired, you actually found out that the movies themselves actually ended up with giving a bad rap and talking about the negative aspects of the Ouija boards. And before exorcism, people were using them on dates on their partner's laps, using them as a tool for divination, talking about talking to spirit. And better yet, my question I always throw out to my Ouija board classes: what's the difference between a Ouija board, an angel board, a spirit board, or a Jesus board?
Are you asking me?
I'm just asking it
Sure.
as general because I always like to ask questions. But if you think about it, it's all about that intention on who you're asking for to come forward.
Okay. If you were going to ask me, I would say that I don't think there's any difference. I think it's just a tool, and the ultimate tool is the person's mind that's utilizing the tool, right?
Absolutely. That's one of we do a lot of paranormal investigations, and one of the conversations will come up in our paranormal investigations. What's the best tool in this bag? And at the end of the day, it's about you. It's about you're the best tool that you can bring to the situation. You're the best tool you can bring to any type of event or anything like that, because you're going to be the first one to know something is different, something is going amok. And you're going to be able to bring up that information, because at the end of the day, all the gadgets and gizmos are fun, but I've seen a lot of gadgets and gizmos freak out along the way.
Tell me about the shop. What's the name of the shop? Where is
We
the
have
shop?
the Healing Brew in Akron, Ohio. We are a metaphysical tea shop. So we actually do spiritualist events. We do spiritualism. We do platform seances, a whole bunch of different stuff. This just here a couple of weeks ago, we did our Victorian Christmas event. And you come in, get food, you get tea, and you actually end up getting a reading from one of our house mediums along the way.
So there's another shop in Ohio that I'm familiar with that I've interviewed the owner of that shop, the Buckland's Museum there. Have you been over there? That's in the
I
same
have
state as
been
you.
there.
Have you?
Unfortunately, with my schedule, I have not been to the new location yet. I know
I see.
Steve has an amazing Bucklands exhibit. He has a lot of different, a lot of cool stuff. But just with my schedule and stuff, I haven't had a chance to actually go check out the new location. They just actually moved into a larger location. They have an opportunity to show off a lot more of their collection.
So what other functions do you have at your shop particularly? Is there a large book? Is there a lot of herbs? Definitely divination going on. Do you read divination in the shop?
I'm actually one of the, I'm psychic medium, which means I do readings on a daily basis. We actually do classes. We have books, we have herbs, we have teas. We also do energy work. So we actually have quite a bit of our staff is trained in Reiki, access bars, as well as astral surgery. That's actually one of my specialties, is actually doing astral or psychic surgery.
I'm not really familiar with astral surgery. Can you explain?
Absolutely. I'm throwing a lot at you
Awesome.
this morning.
Yeah,
So,
awesome.
astral surgery is basically we all have an energetic body double. If you think about it, I have me as a human form, and then I have my spiritual body that is also available. And if whatever we work on the spiritual body with also reflects back to the physical body, whatever we do the physical body also turns around and reflects to that spiritual body. So, one of the ways that you can actually start healing past life trauma, start healing this world trauma, start working into a lot of those different elements, is actually start working on that spiritual body. And we can actually be able to access through the human body, as well as using different tools and everything from crystals to laying on hands, as well as working with pendulums and different things like that. I've been pushed to offer a psychic surgery class. I don't know if it's in the works yet, but it's definitely a conversation that we'll get into.
Is the psychic surgery class, is that something that you're going to be presenting on WitchCon?
If I think about it for next year, it might be a good conversation or a good starting point. I would actually have to start organizing my brain as far as presenting it. Being a psychic medium, a lot of the information comes through to me more intuitive. And so I would have to sit down and start working through some of the information and get it into concrete form to be able to present it. Just like my topic coming up for WitchCon this time is Victorian spiritualism, and looking at really looking at the roots of modern day mediumship. Yes, a lot of people will talk about mediumship as part of that shaman era and working with ancestors and stuff like that. But what we know as mediumship really goes back to the Fox sisters and really goes back to upstate New York. And they actually were doing series of knocks to actually be able to ascertain spirit, be able to ascertain who it was and how they presented themselves. And then we have a culture that sprung up around it through the Shakers. And a lot of people don't realize that the Shakers and Quakers and spiritualism are like this. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know the roots within spiritualism and roots within Shakers all go back and forth. And people really get in, want to, even nowadays more than ever, want to get into their head about what it is and what it's not and everything like that. And at the end of the day, I really feel the reason why the church did not approve of it is more people were spending their money to go to Mary's seance than going to Sunday morning service with Father Bill.
Do you think that Ohio has a large mediumship community compared to other parts of the country?
I think it does, and I think part of that boils down to is when you start looking at the way that the spiritualist camps were actually created and founded throughout Northeast Ohio and into Indiana, as well as Pennsylvania and New York. We have that collection of more mediums than normal, and I think a lot of that comes down to with how that information spread. If you really start looking at it, if you look at the 1800s, if you start looking at that tail end of the 1800s, the information had to go by horseback or the information had to go by train. And so as that information started flooding out, what would happen? A medium would actually go to Lilydale, would go to Camp Ashley, would go to Camp Chesterfield, or go to one of the camps in the area. They'd learn table tipping. They would learn some communication with spirit, and they take it home to their house and have their home circles and go, hey guys, I learned this cool trick over the weekend. Let's see what we can do with it. And then actually start breaking in and starting to create more information, start creating a bigger conversation at the end of the day. And I think that's what mediumship is all about. It's about creating a bigger conversation of than just you or I, and looking at that greater community, looking at that greater consciousness as part of the conversations and stuff like that. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize, like I was talking about it, just like you or I would go to summer camp when we were a kid, adults would go to spiritualist camp. They would go to church camp. They would go to these spiritualist camps all over the United States. Right now, we have really, truly three functioning ones right now. Those all fall under the national. But other than that, you had quite a few just here in Akron, Ohio. We had Camp Brady Lake, which is just a few hours from here. Well, I shouldn't even say a few hours, a few minutes down the road. So you had all these camps going on, that information was coming out. And not only that, during that Victorian era, it was seen as the cool thing to do to host a medium. It was a cool thing to do to have a seance, to do a table tipping. A lot of your hotels, as well as your highfalutin houses of the day, would have a seance room built in as part of that piece. If you go into a very highfalutin house of the day, if you go into one of the mansions, you'll actually find a room without windows. And a lot of people go, why would you want a room without windows? It's because they were conducting seances in there. They were conducting those blackout style seances and everything else like that. Generally, they were even done on the round as well. Because you didn't want a
Love to
corner.
hear love to hear a quick story of your most extraordinary seance.
So actually, you know what? I'm going to share one from Hex because I just had one. I was up at Hex in Massachusetts with Christian Day. I was up there for the month. I was up there doing readings. I was doing seances, and I actually had a seance that I was doing. And we opened the circle, and one of the conversations I always talk about. One, let's do an education real quick because I can't have this conversation because I interchange words here, and we got to do some word education real quick. So the word
Sure.
seance is French, comes up through New Orleans. It is termed by the Spiritist movement, which came before the Spiritualist movement and everything else like that. The word circle comes out of upstate New York. It comes from the Quaker movement. It comes from all those things. So you'll hear me use those words interchangeably. To me, there is no difference between a circle and a seance. They're all the same thing. And even if we want to talk about a gallery or a platform, that's a whole other conversation. But at the end of the day, they're all just a different variation of a seance. I was in seance. I always talk about opportunity for touching. And so one of the things I get a lot is I'll have spirit touch people and stuff like that. I was actually hosting a seance and I had a lady who was talking about her dad and her dad presented. We were able to, provide evidence, start talking about who he was. And she actually had his hand on her back. And she could actually feel that hand on her back, and it was just enough part of that conversation that she was actually surprised that she could actually feel the hand there, giving her comfort and stuff like that. Like she said, she can even feel the warm hand on her back and stuff like that.
Real quickly, if you're just tuning in or if you watch this as a rebroadcast, there's a little situation in the left-hand corner of your screen, and that's I think it's a Q type where you take your phone and you can zap it, and it'll bring you right to a link. If you zap that with your phone, it'll go right to Bryan Peters' WitchCon presentation. So make sure you sign up today for WitchCon with Bryan Peters.
And I know
Yep.
coming up here for WitchCon, we'll actually be doing, we'll be talking about Victorian spiritualism. We'll be talking about seances, and we'll be getting into a lot of trouble along the way.
What kind of trouble?
Just talking about mediumship and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of misnomers and there's a lot of misinformation that's still within this world. And I think one of the biggest ones I always talk about is people who think the moment you start into mediumship, you have all these negative spirits, you have all these, yes, I'll use the word demons and everything else like that. And it's farthest from the truth. And I think a lot of it is just educating people on what the truth is about mediumship, the truth about spirit, and just take it from there.
So I know that in different crafts around the craft, mediumship I think is underrepresented. I haven't really interviewed many people of the craft that embrace mediumship. Who is your, let's say, inspiration when it comes to mediumship? I know Sybil Leek was real big into mediumship. Raymond Buckland too.
Yeah, you know what? I think for me, mediumship. If you were going to put me on the spot, I actually had a lot of spiritualist influences. Carol Borowski, Elaine Bevins, even Gary Mannion came out to the shop. A lot of them are very gifted mediums. Gary's a gifted physical medium, and so there is a lot where I sit here and sit here and go, "How did this all work?" I don't know. I just started down this route. And I think where it's interesting, you talk about a lot of people in witchcraft not embracing mediumship. But if you look at hoodoo and voodoo and they're looking at their ancestors, they're looking at that connection to their loved ones, at the end of the day, that's mediumship. My only difference is I believe that I can talk to spirit and they're going to talk back to me. I can talk to God and I'm going to hear a response back. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's knowing that if I want to have a conversation with someone, I can get a conversation back. And I think that's what it's all about. I think so many religions, so many people are so focused on yelling at the universe, yelling at God, yelling at people, and never giving them a chance to answer. And I think as humans, I think we're used to yelling at people on a daily basis. And I think we need to take a moment and let them speak. And if we let God speak, we let our ancestors speak, we're going to find out what it's truly all about.
A lot of people have different ways that they connect with spirit. How do you and how do your filters connect to spirit?
What do you mean by filters? If you're going to sit down and ask me how I read, I'm very regimented. I have very strong boundaries. I have very strong rules. I have spirit step forward. Females on the left, males are on the right. If I'm not in my shop, you don't bother me. So I have very strong boundaries when it comes to stuff like that. And I think for me, I think by having those stronger boundaries, it allows spirit to present more fully and give me more information, because it does me no good if spirit presents and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. And a lot of mediums, a lot of psychics out there will get information and they're not quite sure what they're supposed to do with it. And that's why I just tell my team, I tell spirit, this is how I want it. If you're not gonna play nice, I don't want the information, because it just allows me to work that much further. And also too, there's a lot of people out there say if you don't use it, you'll lose it. But at the same time, if yes, I'm using it, the only thing is I just have a very strong sense of boundaries at the end of the day.
And before you utilize your gifts, do you banish or invoke or create a sacred space?
So I'm going to ask you why. So I know I'm a bad human being and I ask questions. That's what I do. That I think a lot of my clients know this by at this point. But for me, it's really knowing that we are that divine being. We are that aspect of God. And truly being, if I'm a divine being, what is there out there to be afraid of? What out there is there for me to be afraid of? And I always laugh and say, just because grandma died pissed off doesn't mean it's not grandma. And so, knowing that spirit is divine, knowing that we all have these elements of it, and for me, my biggest part of this conversation is understanding that there is going to be a duality. And part of that duality is, one, bringing the vibrations I want to work with, and two, saying a prayer, saying an opening conversation, invoke and bringing forth the loved ones, bringing forth those conversations of those people I want to talk with. And a lot of people out there want to get into that heavy darkness, and if you want that to show up, you can ask it to show up just the same as I can ask for loved ones to step forward.
So tell me more about your website, thehealingbrew.com. How does it work?
We actually
What's the
have a couple. We actually do have quite a bit of information on there. We send out newsletters. You can actually get bookings. You can actually schedule appointments with me. I do virtual appointments. I do in person. Just coming up, I was in West Virginia at a platform event, and I'll be off to England doing another series of platform events. So I'm definitely all over the place. If it's something you're interested in, you want to get a hold of me, I always tell people reach out to me via the website. And we can work from there as far as booking an appointment. Better yet, just use the booking app and you can get a handle of where I am and when's the best way to schedule with me.
Do you have any publications or books that you've written?
I do have a couple publications. I actually have my Victorian Spiritualism book is out. I also have a self-published psychic development book that we actually use in class for our psychic development classes, as well as a couple other books that are actually in the works about putting out different topics, everything from spirit guides and stuff like that. Because I think a lot of this information has been lost and it's not been pushed out successfully. And I think it's a good way to kind of work with different people and work with different conversations, getting the information out, and more people be aware of it. The best information I can give you is if mediumship is something you're interested in, I will encourage you to go check out the camps that are still in existence. You have Camp Casadega, Camp Lilydale, as well as Camp Chesterfield, as well as reaching out to myself. I do remote learning, remote classes as well, and those are conducted on a one-on-one basis.
I've only been familiar with Camp Lilydale because Lilydale is the place that Raymond Buckland went to, and he talks about it in his companion book. Now everybody knows about the complete book of witchcraft from Raymond Buckland, but he made like another book similar to that for spiritualism, I believe.
Yep, Spirit
And
Communication. It's the red book. Yep.
Right. Talks about Camp Lilydale exclusively in that book with photographs, and that's the only reason why I've heard about it. Have you been to Lilydale?
I have been to Lilydale. I've also been to, like I said, Camp Chesterfield and Camp Casadega. There was also Camp Silver Bell. There was Camp Ashley, Camp Brady Lake. There's a bunch of different camps that were all throughout. You even had Camp Shaker that was up by Lake Erie. So the camps were all over. And the Camp Lilydale was one of the ones that are still around. That people know. I'm going to say it's the most popular. It's the most. I'm going to say the most Hollywood of them. You're going to get more of the connections and stuff like that. There's more people who are still coming to Lilydale on a regular basis. What's even more incredible and scary is we have three functioning camps, as well as we have a handful of churches that are in the United States. If you go across the pond to England, there's a Spiritualist church on every corner. And as part of Spiritualist teachings, as part of Spiritualist message services, you actually end up with a divine service, and then you get messages from loved ones at the end. So I always tell you, if you're interested in mediumship, go check out a Spiritualist church. You won't be disappointed.
Really good bunch of information there for sure.
Yep.
If somebody would be interested in mediumship and maybe feels that they have the potential for heightened clairvoyance and etc., what would be your advice to them to strengthen their clairvoyant muscles?
I'm going to give you two. My first is make sure you're trusting what you're getting, and I think people need to realize that intuition is instant. If you're sitting there thinking about it for 5-10 minutes, that's not intuition. That's you're overthinking it. That's you stepping into your human body and trying to overcomplicate something. Think about it. Mediumship, if you look at a little kid that's in a bedroom who's talking to their imaginary friend, Side note, hint, those aren't imaginary friends. They're doing that. They're playing. They're having fun. They're offering those experiences without much issue. As an adult, we get into those issues. We get into those breaks where we're unable to connect. That being said, the other one is getting out of the fear of it, getting out of the false evidence appearing real, getting out of not being worthy, getting out of not being able good enough to be able to do the work. And I think once we realize and once we accept that, it's so much easier to do the work. It's so much easier to step into spirit and be able to provide information with evidence and everything else like that.
I want to go back to your books. Are your books currently available on Amazon under Bryan Peters?
They are available on Amazon. They're available for Kindle downloads and stuff like that. They are out there in the ethers. You just got to check them out. I will share this link and everything off on my personal social media, and I'll make sure I push out some information about my books and stuff like that as well. Once I share all this information, so people can find it. Always, if you're looking at it, add me on social media, add me on Facebook, and I'll make sure you can get a copy of my book.
Very, very cool. You talked about the 3 different mediumship camps. Have you been to any pagan festivals in the country?
Yeah, actually quite a few. I actually have done I've been to part of Cleveland Pagan Pride, some of the other organizations and stuff like that. Been there, done. I mean, for me, my biggest thing is I'm gonna laugh and say, if you're going to work within mediumship, if you're going to be doing that, for me, I actually get a lot more successes for readings and stuff through the camps. But that being said, we actually do the Cleveland Renaissance festivals. We do a bunch of different other festivals throughout the summer as part of just doing the work. And, that's part of, someone told me a long time ago, the easiest way to get good at something is to do 100 items, do it 100 times before you say you're bad at it. So what's the easiest way to do 100 readings? Find a lot of people.
What kind of music do you like? Do you like pagan music?
I do. I actually have a lot of drum stuff that I listen to. I'm very eclectic with my music. I even on a personal level, everything from Metallica to Broadway shows, everything like that. I'm all across the board when it comes to music. And stuff like I have always been that eclectic person. I always tell people, if you're going to throw a witchcraft title at me, I'm probably the eclectic witch. That's who I am. If it's something that resonates with me, great. I will follow through with it. If it doesn't resonate with me, I'll move on to something else. And I think that's how everybody has to look at different things. They have to look at different sources and stuff like that. Because if you look at what works for you, great. If it doesn't, leave it behind and move on to the next.
So WitchCon 2026 in February 20th to the 23rd is the largest online for the country. And we just lost Bryan there, but we only have a couple minutes left. Hopefully he can pop back up on there. Hopefully we can bring Ben back on. If we can't, we really appreciate you coming on the stream today. And we'll see if we can get back on for some closing words. It looks like he's trying to. And for now, we'll take a quick commercial break. Keep it right here on Witchcraft TV for that Lone Wolf Show with that special series of WitchCon presenters. And I'll leave you with this quick commercial.
We have great shows here on the station. We have Covendom with Brian Kane and Levi Rowland and Eli Barnes every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Step into the mystical realms of Covendom, the spellbinding show where the secrets of witchcraft are unveiled. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or simply curious about the craft, Covendom offers an enlightening journey into the world of the wise. Tune in and transfer your perception of witchcraft through adept conversations of magical insights. Catch the magic on Witchcraft TV, Covendom, where the hidden becomes revealed.
All right, we have our guest right back. A little bit of technical gremlins there. Bryan Peters, WitchCon 2026 February 20th to the 23rd. He's in there one of those days, I'm sure. You got the Q link right on the left-hand corner, or you can go right to the website at witchcon.com. So you're going to the biggest online presentation of witches in the world. What else functions or festivals you have lined up coming for spring and summer this year? Anything?
As I stated, I'll be in England coming up in the spring. I'll be back at Camp Chesterfield. I will be back in the wonderful world of Salem, Massachusetts coming up in October. I have a bunch of different summer events and stuff like that. I'm always out keeping busy through different events and stuff like that. Also, the shop keeps me hopping. We'll be doing a lot of classes and special events coming up here at the Healing Brew. Best way to keep information up and kind of looking at it is check out our Facebook page. I do a lot of other social media, but my Facebook is my strongest at this point in time.
My final question for the interview is, when it comes to WitchCon as an online festival, the largest online festival in the world, what is the thing that you like the most about it?
Really, truly, it's an opportunity to reach people that I would never have an opportunity to talk to in a million years. You know, it's like you said, it's that connection. It's reaching out to other people. It's making these inroads to communities. I made some conversations and connections just here recently with WitchCon in Salem, Massachusetts, being able to talk to people that saw my class or interacting with people at different events who said, "Oh my God, I was in your class," and being able to be able to have conversations and meet people face to face. If you know me, I love to talk. If you see me out and about, make sure you come out and say hi to me. I always try to be that person that makes it the most. I always say I'm trying to be as friendly, as open as possible.
So with that being said, can you lead us out with some good advice to mediumship seekers, or a prayer, or last words of advice?
Last words of advice. I did probably 300 readings in Salem, Massachusetts throughout the month of October. One of the things I always talk about is Spirit gives us a conversation. They give us a thread throughout a lot of the readings that come forward, and one of those threads that I seen come through all those readings is about fear. And at the end of the day, it's making sure that you get out of the fear, get out of the judgment, and actually get into the power of being yourself. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to work on is getting out of the fear. It's false evidence appearing real. And at the end of the day, if you are embracing fear, if you're embracing that anxiety, you need to figure out how to give that up. If it is to spirit, if it is to a candle, if it is to whatever you need to do to get that to move from you and step into that higher being and step into that higher self. You know, I always talk about stress and anxiety. It's like running from a dinosaur, right? That's what it's really good for. I don't want to hate mail because I'm talking about people and dinosaurs together. That's a different conversation. But we're running from dinosaurs, right, guys? And if we can take a step, take a breath, and actually stop running from a dinosaur, stop getting that stress, bringing yourself out of that anxiety, you're actually going to find out that you're in a better place to do magic. You're in a better place to connect to spirit, and better yet, you're in a better way to live your life.
Thank you so much for that. And thanks so much for coming on the Lone Wolf Show right here on www.witchcrafttv.online. We're on Facebook, TikTok, all kinds of stations. We're talking to developers for Roku coming real soon. And we'll talk to you later. Blessed be to Bryan. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Blessed be, guys. Bye, guys.
There's an online television station dedicated to all-the-time pagan music videos on the Witchcraft TV platform. Keep it right here on Pagan Music TV on www.witchcrafttv.online.
What if your vision could breathe? What if your sanctuary could speak? Witchcraft TV, we're already with you.
1, 2, all less low, so we do it like